Let's talk once again about Eververse. Potentially a little bit of a tired conversation. I'm sure it won't be the very last time that we talk about Eververse, but hopefully in the future it's going to be a little bit less of a painful subject than what it has been up until now, because I believe we're at a bit of a turning point here potentially. At the same time, we do need to remain vigilant, and we need to hold Bungie to their promises about Eververse, because the way Eververse was implemented at the start of D2 was predatory in my opinion. Not purely because you could buy the stuff or gamble for the items from engrams. Personal beliefs around those issues are kind of a separate conversation, but to me, Eververse was predatory because Bungie took our passion for loot, and loot being a huge chunk of what Destiny is about, and capitalized on it in a way that tipped the scales in their favor much more than it did in ours. That's just how I personally feel on the subject. But Eververse, Tess, she's just had a bit of a nerf, man. And when I say a bit of a nerf, it's actually quite a nerf. She practically got kicked off the tower. Of course, I'm only joking, and we're only part of the way there, but we have been through all the controversy. We've had the initial response to Bright Engrams, the poor drop rates, XP throttling, and then when the Dawning launched, which was almost exclusively Eververse Fest, in response, the player base, we made a lot of noise. We made noise, and we made it very clear that we didn't like the way that things were working. And so I wanted to kind of highlight the fact that Bungie have made some changes here. Like I said though, this isn't purely a well done Bungie video. I think it's important to assess our position, given, how much noise we did make about this, and to help ensure that, we stay on this positive course going forward. So we did hear about a bunch of these changes. We saw them on paper in the development update, and it's kind of like, okay, well, let's see if it actually happens. But now, fast forwarding to Crimson Days, we have had a lot of improvements to Eververse itself. Don't get me wrong, I understand the various angles that people have about this event. For players who have put Destiny 2 aside, they want reasons to come back, real reasons. And for folks in that boat, cosmetics are just not gonna do it, You also have the fact that the major gameplay element for this event is PvP focused, which certainly turns off quite a few people as well. And in future, as far as the events go, I think, a couple of really appealing weapons that look really cool, or even an exotic quest or something, would make these kind of events more inclusive and appealing for folks, and it is something that they did in the past with D1. But outside of the gameplay and the loot, and the cosmetics and whether you like that stuff, in this event, Eververse is a big talking point because, like I said, it's been more or less nerfed into the ground in this particular instance. In Crimson Days, all of the loot basically comes from actual gameplay. You cannot buy the Crimson Engram. This has always been a thing in these events. All the way through D1, everything we had in D2, you could always buy the engrams. They took that ability away. Select rewards, the Wardcliff ornament, the emote, actually come from playing specific activities. There are a couple of items that you can purchase from the Eververse store by using silver dust, but it's worth remembering that players can accumulate silver dust by, pure gameplay, and it also has no actual direct monetary value. So things have really changed on the front of the loot system there, because if you look at the previous events, if you look at the Dawning, it was much more paywalled than what it is right now. They did give us a select handful of things that we could get through gameplay, but they were kind of like bad reskins of other cooler reskins, basically, that were in the engrams. And it was very, very clear that the focus was on making as much money via those engrams. Even in Activision's recent earnings report, they demonstrated that they'd made a lot of money from microtransactions in the last quarter, more than they'd made from actual DLC sales. And in the case of Destiny, Curse of Osiris sold more than the Dark Below did. It may sound kind of crazy to us now, but this is real. These are the facts. So when you put it into perspective, they made a lot of money from, things like the Dawning and the general Eververse transactions that happened after, Season 2 began. And this time around with Crimson Days, it's going to be very, very different. And the thing about this is, I feel like there is no turning back in the future on this. In what world are people going to tolerate another event cropping up that is obviously very heavily paywalled? It's just not going to go down well. And I think, obviously, looking at how Crimson Days has been changed, Bungie know that. But there is something else we need to hold them to. When they outlined the changes they were going to make for Crimson Days in particular, they also outlined more sweeping Eververse changes, kind of similar to what Crimson Days has done, but that will kind of affect the entire game. So they said, we'll be making 3 changes for upcoming seasons, shifting the balance of new content in favor of activity rewards over Bright Engrams. This includes adding ghosts, sparrows, and ships, to date only found in the Bright Engram, to achievement reward pools. On top of this, they wanted to provide gameplay paths to earn Bright Engrams and all of the contained rewards, and give players more direct purchase options, and make adjustments to Bright Engrams to allow players to get the items they want more often. So it is, a much more widespread version of the changes happening inside of Crimson Days, and it also looks like that knockout system that we currently have, which stops you getting duplicates, is going to be a thing for the Eververse Engrams in general. I do personally wish they could have made these changes sooner, but there are a lot of things on the roadmap. One thing they should have done is actually listed these Eververse changes on the roadmap for May. So if you look at the start of Season 3 right there, we can see the stuff about prestige modes, the Crucible rankings, the fact that DLC is actually launching, and a whole bunch of other stuff. This is also when Bungie said we would be getting the general Eververse changes, so we really need to hold them to that. I'm almost certain that Bungie right now will be looking at how they can restructure things to continue to earn money via Eververse, considering the kind of changes they're going to have to make. So we do need to keep on and make sure that these changes are something that are spoken about again, and we need to see them land in Season 3 right there. Are these Eververse changes going to fix the game? Well, no, they're not going to solve the other loot problems in the game. I think it's certainly better if some of the stuff that comes from Eververse is actually dropping throughout the game. It makes it that little bit more interesting if the rest of the game actually has meaningful rewards. Don't get me wrong, Destiny 2 needs meaningful loot. I hear you guys, I am completely with you on that. So like I said, these Eververse changes don't fix the game's biggest issues, but they are what we asked for, and so far we have started to get them, so we need to make sure we continue to get them. Because, right now, much like the title says, Bungie have deconstructed their Eververse, and as they rethink it and reconstruct it, which is going to happen, we need to make sure the scales are tipped in our favor this time. Let me know your thoughts, guys. I'm not going to rant anymore, but if you agree with this video, a like is very much appreciated. If not, the other button is always an option. Whatever you do, I appreciate you watching here, though. If you do want to see more Destiny 2 content and conversation, feel free to hit that subscribe button. But for now, I'll catch you guys very soon.